2019. The purpose of this pre-meeting briefing is to conduct a briefing session with administrative staff regarding the posted agenda for the regular board meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. on February 7, 2019. For the record, I'm going to announce who all is present right now. Ms. Tara Herbachik, Mr. John Matthews, Ms. Sally Derrick, Mr. Randy Shackman, Ms. Candace Valenzuela, and myself, Guillermo Ramos. Nancy Klein, from what I understand, is running a little bit late today. A briefing session with administrative staff regarding the posted agenda for the regular board meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. on February 7, 2019. Board members, do you have any questions regarding the consent agenda items? Mr. Shackman?
Mr. Ramos, a couple of items. One, item 4E, I don't think it needs to be pulled from the consent agenda. I would be willing to make the motion in the meeting and would like to make a comment on that so that we get the transparency into the record about the great financial windfall, if you will, that's providing to the district through great work. And so we just like to get that into the record, and then I'll be happy to make the motion on that. I would like to pull item 4F, which is the motion to approve auditor, so that we can have a brief discussion on that in the meeting.
So that's, just to recap, that's 4E and 4F. Okay. Board members, any other consent agenda items? There is one for myself, and it's regarding 4C that I'll probably abstain from voting on that one. Moving on to the pre-meeting number 3, reports by administration. Dr. Chapman, are there any reports by administration?
Yes, sir. Thank you. For number 4, it says report on domain. Dr. Warnock is unable to be here. She is tending to a family situation. So instead, I want to walk through a little bit about our safety and security. And so I wanted to, first of all, introduce you to our new Director of Safety and Security. His Mario De La Rosa is here, and we want to walk through a little pieces of what we're doing so far as we've transitioned after seeing and listening to True North's assessment. Mr. De La Rosa wants to walk you through a couple of components of a safety app, and then I'd like for him to actually introduce himself, tell him a little bit about himself to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Mario De La Rosa. I'm very fortunate to be here with this new position as the Safety and Security Director. And like Dr. Chapman said, just to give you a little background, I'm prior law enforcement, federal service, and kind of fell into the school districts. I just most recently came from Round Rock ISD, where I served in the same position, and just like you guys had it all started with a security assessment. So I really want to commend you. That is a great way to start. That just shows you how important safety and security is. Not many districts do it, but the True North assessment is very important, and hopefully I'm here to help you guys and work together and build on that and get us to that next level of security. So just to talk a little bit about the assessment, I got here a little bit after the assessment, but I had the chance to meet with True North, and you guys are no different than any other district. There's always room for improvement, and some of the things, we're already addressing some of the findings, and some of them are long-term, bond funded, but some other ones are just things that we can address immediately. One of the things that is very important is training, getting our teachers to know why and what to do in an emergency. You know, we always think of the worst case scenario, but there are many other emergencies that happen on a daily basis. So Dr. Chapman has agreed that hopefully this summer we're working with our law enforcement entities, and we can provide the civilian response to active shooter events to our staff district-wide. This is a general training that is given to churches and interest groups, but it's a good foundation to build on that. So we're working right now as we speak with Carrollton PD and Irvin PD and others, so we can set that up in the summer. it's the logistics of putting together a staff of 3,000 might take a little while, but that is coming down the line. Another thing, our district emergency plan, that's something that is on the top of the list as per the assessment, and we'll be working to update our emergency plan and get everybody on board. They can know what to do on an emergency, what not to do. So that takes time. That's going to be part of the training. Right now, I'm in the process of instituting a E911 emergency notification. If anybody in the district dials 911, some of us here at the district also are notified immediately. That excuse me, that allows us to be proactive and call the school and say what's going on. And it can be anything from an allergic reaction but it gives us that opportunity to be proactive and get the right assets if needed. And more importantly, I think you guys have been watching the news, and Dr. Chapman wanted me to speak a little bit about the anonymous alerts. It's an app, it's an application, it's a program, and most recently Garland ISD, I don't know if you guys watch TV, but it was on the news. I'm very familiar with that. We used it in Round Rock with great success. It's not only for bullying and cyberbullying, but just other things that happen. And it's just a way of kids to come forward and talk to their administrators, let them know that there's something going on. It's a great app, and it is anonymous, so kids are more inclined to use it and report any wrongdoings on their campuses or to administrators. Dr. Chapman has given us the green light to go ahead, so we're talking to the company, so hopefully here in the next few weeks, we'll start setting up training and stuff for our administrators. And as well as the smart button. I don't know if you're familiar with the smart button. The smart button is basically an application that it's for staff members. It would be for district-wide staff members. And it's basically a panic button and an emergency notification where there's something going on. Myself, Dr. Chapman, we can alert our campuses or district-wide, in any scenario, bad weather, or, active shooter or anything. So, excuse me. So I think it's going to be a great tool for us, the emergency notification, because in most instances, in an emergency, the notification part, and it's the first thing that falls through, through the ground. So we're looking forward to it and just putting other things in place as we move forward. Like I said at the beginning, you guys are no different. Every district struggles, but you guys have taken a big step on bringing an outside entity, to look at what you have. And it's a double-edged sword, but I feel confident we're going to put some good things in place, and we can move forward, and hopefully the community and the students and our staff will embrace and just create a culture of awareness. I don't know if y'all had any questions regarding any of the apps or anything.
I have a few questions. That's all
Yes.
really great information. Can you tell me, so the E911 system you're referring to, that means if anyone was to call 911 from a campus phone, wired phone, then it would notify someone at the district level that had happened?
Yes, at the moment that the call is being placed from any room or anywhere in the district, any classroom or the nurse's office, at the same time that they're placing their call, I'm getting a notification saying Central Elementary School is dialing 911, and it gives me a location of what room and where they're dialing it from. So, which is really good, because now I know that there's something. Now, it might just be a kid misdialed. So what I usually do is I call immediately, not the number that is there, but the front office, and say, hey, are you guys okay? And a lot of times, the lady in the front office might say, well, that's from the nurse, let me go check. But it really helps in being proactive. Yes, that's the way it
I think
works.
it's a wonderful addition. Speaking as a nurse from a hospital
Yes.
standpoint, something similar
It's
that we
called
use.
the E911
Okay.
system, emergency E911, and there are different programs out there, but it is very, very good.
What about the app? Are y'all willing to tell us the name of the app that we're using? The name of the?
The anonymous alerts? Yes, that's the bullying and
Anonymous
cyberbullying, yes.
Okay.
It's called anonymous alerts, also referred to as AA, and it's the vendor's name or the company's name is K-12. A lot of districts nationwide have adopted it. I've used it for about 5 years in my previous district. And it's just a great tool that, encourages the kids, because as you know, a lot of kids are afraid to come forward and embarrassed. But we have gotten great information, from anywhere from, drugs on campus, weapon on campus, to somebody cheating on schoolwork, or, even a teacher voicing their political views, But it's good, because then it can be addressed by the campus administrators. So it's a great app.
Very good. And then on the panic button that you referred to?
Yes.
Will that work both ways, where from central office you can send alerts out to campuses, but the campus can also send a panic alert out?
That's correct.
Okay.
So an administrator at the campus or whoever, the administrators, an AP that has access to that, can send a notification to their campus, to their staff, or we can send one district-wide to a specific school or to everyone.
Okay, that's great.
So it's a good tool.
And we'll still continue to use the Parent Square, which is new this year. This is just another addition of how we're going to communicate in a timely manner.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions, anything? Yes, sir.
First of all, we're sorry that the world is such that we need you. We are grateful that you are here. Thank you. But there was a discussion on a civic board after the news article was out about the system in Garland. And the discussion that they had was, since the system is anonymous, do they get a lot of anonymous stuff that's not useful? And you've obviously used it. What's been your experience?
That's a great question, because that's what a lot of districts are afraid of. Are we going to open up a can of worms? So it is a great question. Believe it or not, Round Rock ISD has 51,000 students, and there was very few reportings where somebody was abusing it or using it for other means. It happened once in a while, but students, I think, were afraid to. Now, it is anonymous. We had a situation where there was a bomb threat one time, and we got the police involved. They're the ones who subpoenaed the IP address, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the benefit is that it can be anonymous, but in given situations, well, law enforcement will do what they have to. But yes, not too many people abuse it.
It seems to me to be a great tool, but I was
It
just
really
curious
is.
your experience. So.
It really is. When I came here, talked to Dr. Chapman, I brought it up because I really believe in it. It's very simple, user-friendly for students, for parents, and I believe that if it's simple, people will be more willing to download it and report things.
Once we go through the training, once we get everything taken care of, we hope to roll this out in the next, hopefully, month to 2 months at the latest, as we push forward, get as many parents as we can on the app, because you have to obviously take care of that yourself, and start having, I don't know what that promo will be to get more people to put the app on their phone, but it's
There's a
something that
rollout
we're-
campaign
Yeah.
that comes with the system. They've kind of perfected it. It's a rollout campaign. Obviously, our website, and so there'll be emails sent out to. It's really good, so people can get the foundation and as to what the app is going to do. But there is a campaign that we're going to use and work with our communications department to make sure we hit everyone and train all our administrators as they'll be involved in some of these. In some of these reportings at their campus.
Anything else?
Not on safety and security.
Okay. So we're,
No other questions on safety and security?
yeah, no.
Okay, I'd like to walk you through, a couple board members were asking me about legislative talking points. Had a meeting yesterday with Deputy Commissioner TEA, TASB, TASA, and started walking through some of what is those stances going to be. And I'm going to start sending you, I have been, but I'll be sending you multiple bills, but it's still really early in the session. But I want to touch on 4 components, and I'm not going to walk through it today, but I'm going to touch on what we're looking at 4 different organizations to be talking points across the state of Texas, and one of them is going to be school finance. And I'm going to give you, it's a 3-page document for you to review at your leisure. Also, vouchers. There's going to be very little that are spoken on vouchers and what that's going to entail in the future. I believe that bill will come up, but it probably won't have as much legs on it this year. The third piece, critical, is going to be pre-K. And so that is going to be, you'll see multiple bills on the House and Senate side providing pre-K for all students, full day. That will be something that we, even as CFBISD, will be pushing. And then the A through F accountability system and looking at how we can tweak high state standards. One of the components of that, and you can see some of my notes that are listed there is whenever we compare, and Dr. Warnock was going to mention this today, and I was a full advocate of making sure we were compared with districts of same background, same economically disadvantaged, and they put a chart on, and the lower you're economically disadvantaged, the higher you had to score. The higher your economic disadvantage, the lower you had to score. That's great. But one of the components that was in place is comparing, if we're 65% economically disadvantaged, where do we fit on that list? And so even though we may be 25,000 students, we're still compared to a district that may be of 4,000 students. Now, there's pros and cons there. Now, let me say the pros and cons. The bigger your population, 1 or 2 students, and this is our case, this is where I'm kind of telling on us, 1 or 2 students will not affect your overall score. A district of 4,000 students where they have to have a minimum of X amount of students, 25 or 50, 1 student could destroy the whole. So is that true apples and apples? The answer is no, it's not. So tweaking some of those conversations as we move forward. Also having conversations of the end of year, EOCs, end of year with those 5. We used to have 15, we went to 5. What does that look like in the future, and how can we have deeper conversations on how we push that out in the near future? And then talking 3rd grade through 8th grade and some of those conversations on what is that new structure going to look like. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg, but several of you asked me, can I have some type of information as we meet? We're meeting again next Thursday. I will meet with the commissioner next week, having some of those deeper conversations on what does that look like in the near future. I will say there's a lot of conversations on how we're going to help districts in the future. The November election helped greatly, woke up a few people, and so we're starting to have some conversations on what can we do to help school districts across the state. Not Chapter 41, not Chapter 42, but all with equality. And so that conversation is going to be rich. There has been a subcommittee that's met for an entire year. We're going to look at that piece. But you will see a number of bills coming out of the House and Senate that are going to be that will impact CFB, but will also impact the state of Texas. So I just wanted something in your hand so that you could see it, look at it, and see where we're going in the future. And then one thing that I haven't spoke a lot on that I want the Board of Trustees to know what we're doing. We hired this TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, to come in and look at our personnel, look at our student ratios, look at staffing numbers, et cetera. And so we had that initial conversation. Dr. Coleman's heading that piece. And so we met with them via phone earlier this week in a conference call, and we're mapping out our comparison with 14 different districts that are of our same size, demographics, et cetera. And they're going to look at all facets across our district in the way of personnel, even all the way down to stipends, and they're going to roll out a plan. They're going to come in the district March 19th and 20th. We hope to have a plan in our hand by May. We will bring that to the Board of Trustees so you can see those numbers so that we can start walking through where we are in the very near future. We also have an audit. As you know, this is our first year to take over transportation. And so this is our benchmark year to start looking at, what is it costing us financially? We have a 3-tier system. We're going to look at, could we potentially even go to a 2-tier system? Folks, community members, as you know, I'm meeting with parents. I started meeting with my student advisory groups, and some of those conversations are being, why are we starting middle school so late? That's a conversation. Well, the only way you can fix that is potentially going to a 2-tier system, meaning having one bus that runs for elementary, one bus that runs for secondary, which is middle school, high school. Don't know if that's feasible, that can be done, so we're running and doing an audit there as well. Had a deeper conversation this week with TEA. I have asked TEA / the Deputy Commissioner, Winchester, to come in. We're going to have a conversation on auditing our curriculum, looking at what we're doing. Is what we're doing effective? Will it work? It's TIL is the name of it, and that is, TIL is Texas Instructional Leadership, as well as Effective Schools Framework. And so I am meeting with those individuals in 2 weeks to map out what are we going to look for. Is what we're doing effective? Is there other ways? And then it's gonna pat us on the back and show us the celebrations of the great things we're doing. But that's just going to be that third audit that is coming. Again, I will be meeting with those individuals in the next 2 weeks. I will roll that out 3 weeks with the senior cabinet so they can see what's coming in the future. And then we're going to have both of those organizations come in, look at our curriculum, look at how we do instructional rounds, how we use maps, et cetera. And then they're going to come back with a recommendation and say, here's what you're doing as we move forward. Now, this was put together initially for IR campuses, but it is effective, it's good, rich information for all schools, even those that have A's. Plano ISD just recently did this, and they have an A in 95. But they wanted to go deeper and dive deeper in those schools to say, are we doing things effective? Could we even be greater in what we do in those components? And the answer was, the superintendent came back to me yesterday and says, absolutely, it opened our eyes to even more things, that just because you keep doing it over and over doesn't mean you're going to get different results. And so we're going to look at that too. So there's 3 major audits that are going. Sadly enough, it's February, and so we're already planning into the next school year. And as you know, we're going to have a board work study on the 22nd, and we're going to walk through some personnel. We're going to walk through a few other things with the Board of Trustees, and I will not have that data by that time. But that is the earliest that we could get any of these rolling, because they were so busy through the fall, but it's better late than never. And so that'll map us out through the course of the next at least 6 months to a year. And then the last thing I want to touch on is I'm entering the end of my entry plan. So I've met with business leaders, community leaders, meeting with a large number of parents now. That starts on Monday, where my schedule's completely full of parents. People have taken me up on it, which is wonderful. I love to hear from the parents. And then my student advisory groups and hearing from them. And so I've tasked the advisory group to go out and get me information. If you want to talk about the school lunches, if you want to talk about dress code, if you want to talk about curriculum, if you want to talk about whatever it may be, students, I want to hear from you. And I'm going to bundle all that together. At that point, I'll be able to provide a state of the district where we are. And then we're going to start looking at a strategic plan on how we're going to move forward over the course of the next 5 years. And the last thing is talking a little bit about career and tech ed. So meeting with Brookhaven, so Dr. Chesney, we're putting together a strategic plan. So he has brought in his team, and we're going to sit down and start looking at what can we do for the future. Let me just back up to say, we're doing a lot of great things with 178 certifications. We're walking through Joe Gillen's team, remarkable, one of the best I've ever seen. But what does the future look like for a first grader? And so the answer is, we have no idea what that job future is. We can't even fathom what it is tomorrow. So what is that facility going to look like? How can we grow what that future is? And so we are thinking outside the box. So with that, we need partnerships, and those partnerships are going to be with the various DCCC schools, colleges, that we can partnership with them with the region of superintendents. So we're meeting again next week, and so can we partnership with some of the larger districts, let the hubs be the Dallas CCC colleges, and then we together as different districts can work together with one central location for certifications, higher education, to meet the needs of all kids, not just necessarily ours. So it kind of gives you an update of some of the things we're doing right now.
Okay, that's plenty. Anybody have any questions about all those audits and buses and everything? Well, with that, it appears we've reached the end of our agenda. And it is 6:29 PM, and we are adjourned. I call this regular meeting of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees to order at 7:02 PM on February 7th, 2019. Board members, district staff members, and members of the audience, you are free to join me in standing as Imam Yasser Burgess of Valley Ranch Islamic Center provides a message followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by John Matthews and the Pledge of the Texas flag led by Sally Derrick.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone, and peace be with you. This is a recitation from the first chapter of the Holy Quran in Arabic, followed by the translation and the meaning of it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. In the name of God, then, the compassionate, the merciful. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds, the compassionate, the merciful, ruler on the day of reckoning. You alone do we worship, and you alone do we ask for help. Guide us on the straight path, the path of those who you receive your grace, not the path of those who have brought down wrath, nor of those who wander astray. Lord of the heavens and the earth, we ask you to bless this gathering and protect this assembly. Shower us with your mercy and grant us guidance in all our affairs. Help us see that which is right and follow it, and see wrong and stay away from it. Give us the ability to lead our community in that which is best. Make us keys to all goodness and locks against all evil. Our Lord, we ask you to put in our hearts the love for one another and to care about each other. We ask you to keep our efforts united for the benefit of our community, our families, students, and for our district. Help us reach our goals in the manner that is most pleasing to you. In your name, our Lord, we begin. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
As a district, we dedicate all our efforts and resources to our goal of high achievement for each student. The board uses this goal to guide all deliberations, decisions, and actions. You will get to see all deliberations, decisions, and actions of the board in open session, with the exception of some items which may be discussed in a closed session as stipulated in the Texas Government Code, Section 551, commonly known as the Open Meetings Law. These items typically deal with personnel matters, consultation with our attorney, and real estate. For the record, the board members present are Candace Valenzuela, Guillermo Ramos, Randy Shackman, Sally Derrick, John Matthews, and Tara Herbacek. And we do constitute a quorum and may conduct business on behalf of the district. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to the next agenda item, I would like to remind you that the board encourages comments from citizens of the district and from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak either as an individual or as a representative of a group may do so during agenda item number 3, audience for guests. Were you raising your hand to speak? No? Okay. Please submit your request to do so on one of the forms provided on the table just outside the north entrance to the boardroom, so that away. You may place the completed form in the box provided on the same table or present your completed form to Administrative Assistant Kim Kessler. So when the board addresses agenda item number 3, audience for guests will invite you to the podium to speak to the board. And our next agenda item is agenda item number 2, special presentations and recognitions. Dr. Chapman?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. As you saw last month and this month, we're going to start demonstrating, showing, displaying student artwork. And in front of you today, we have Landry and Kent Elementary artwork. And so we just want to start showcasing those pieces. We'll have ceramics and some other pieces later on in future months, and then those pieces will be in the back. And so just just again, celebrate the great things that our students are doing. We want to show you those projects. Next, we're going to talk about Teacher of the 9 Weeks. So this is our second round of Teacher of the 9 Weeks. Every Teacher of the 9 Weeks will be eligible for the Campus Teacher of the Year. At the end of the year, the Campus Teachers of the Year will be eligible for a secondary or elementary Teacher of the Year, and we'll hold a banquet in May. The 2 winners for the district will then move on to the regional level. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you. We have so many rock star teachers in the group, and this is just one way for us to celebrate, tell you thank you so much for what you do for our kids each and every day, and we want to give you a small token of appreciation and celebrate you publicly and say, again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Chapman, members of the board, I am Lance Hamlin, the principal at Blaylock Middle School. We are here tonight to introduce you to our teacher of the 9 weeks, Miss Donna Steele. Miss Steele has taught in CFB for 14 years, all at Blaylock Middle School, as a 7th and 8th grade reading fundamentals teacher, a co-teach science teacher, student council sponsor, NJHS sponsor, Veterans Day sponsor, and our student ambassador sponsor. There are many reasons that make her worthy of this recognition, but her ability to meet her students exactly where they are academically, emotionally, and socially allows her to have the positive impact on their overall personal growth. As a principal of Blaylock Middle School, I am grateful to have you do all that you do for our students and staff on a daily basis. You definitely make Blaylock a better place for all. Your dedication to CFB continues to change the lives of our students and community. The Blaylock staff truly loves you. Thank you.
Dr. Chapman, members of the school board, family and friends, good evening. My name is James Henneke, and I am proud to serve as an assistant principal at Barbara Bush Middle School. Thank you for your help this evening in recognizing Ms. Jeanette McCaskill as our teacher of the second 9 weeks. Ms. McCaskill has served as a wonderful language and literature teacher for us for the past 18 years, all in CFB and all as a Bush Bronco. In addition to the classroom, she serves as our National Junior Honor Society sponsor. When asked for a single word to describe Ms. McCaskill, her peers use words like dedicated, compassionate, kind, dependable, kid-focused, generous, and bend over backwards for anyone. For all that and more, we are proud to recognize Ms. Jeanette McCaskill as our teacher of the second 9 weeks. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, members of the board, and guests. My name is Adam Toy, proud principal at the historic DeWitt Perry Middle School. It is my honor to introduce to you Mr. Matthew Johnson as our latest teacher of the 9 weeks. This is Matt's second year teaching 6th grade reading and language arts at Perry Middle School. Prior to joining our Perry family, Matt taught in Dallas ISD and in California. Matt is a quiet, non-assuming, humble, and super effective teacher. Every 9 weeks, we invite our teachers to visit other classrooms of their choice as part of our staff development plan. And over the last year and a half, Matt's classroom has been the most visited by his peers. They want to see what magic he conjures up, how he builds relationships and gets middle school students to be excited about reading. But in his humbleness, he simply just claims that he has an amazing team, a love for reading himself, and that his students are the rock stars, not him. As you can guess, Matt is adored by his students and by the Perry family. Matt, we are honored to celebrate with you here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Johnson.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, school board trustees, and members of the CFB community. My name is Kelly O'Sullivan, and I am the proud principal at Ted Polk Middle School. I have the privilege this evening of introducing our teacher of the second 9 weeks, Miss Sarah Pedlick. Sarah joined CFB and Polk Nation in 2014. She began teaching in Georgia in 1999, including at charter schools and public schools, kindergarten through middle school, before calling CFB her home. Leaving the comfort of her science classroom in 2017 to become our first ever dynamic learning project coach was a risk that she was willing to take to serve the staff and students at Polk. Not to mention, learning time at Google is a great incentive. Her colleagues love to see her coming into their classrooms. They look forward to their coaching sessions and learning as a team in their PLCs. Time with Sarah means focusing on growing professionally and doing what's best for kids. A few of her teammates shared, Sarah is always willing to help wherever she is needed. She always does her job to the best of her abilities, which is incredible and beyond what I ever envisioned. They also said she is always there when I need her and goes above and beyond to solve any problem. She sees problems before they even appear and is proactive in solving them. And finally, she is an advocate for students using technology and engaging in meaningful digital learning. She goes the extra mile to create relationships with both staff and students, including getting to know individual students' learning styles, challenges, and celebrations. She has mentored so many staff members to help push themselves and become better teachers for our kids. We are proud to name Sarah Pedlick as Polk's Teacher of the second 9 weeks.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, members of the board. My name is Joe LaPuma. I have the honor to be the principal at Creekview High School, and I am also honored to be able to present Ms. Madi Gutierrez as Creekview's Teacher of the second 9 weeks. Well, where do I start with this all-star? Madi is a product of CFB. She's a Rainwater, Blaylock, and yes, a Creekview graduate. A Creekview Honor graduate at that, number 10 in her class, who is also a National Hispanic Scholar, who also earned a full-ride scholarship to the University of Alabama, where she earned her Bachelor's of Science in Biology and graduated with honors. Any guess what she teaches? Yes, biology. Madi started her career with Teach for America, and through some Mustang connections, we were able to get Madi over for a practice interview, and she's been a Mustang ever since. I could speak briefly about how Madi has led our biology team as an instructional facilitator to have helped us earn distinction designations in science every year, or about how the students in her class absolutely adore her, or her leading our campus biology team scores to be at 95% passing, or how she mentors new teachers to our campus, etc. But instead, what really makes Madi G stand out is her commitment, understanding, and implementation of the so very important relational piece of learning. She knows her content, but she really knows how to care for students, how to make them feel safe, and how to break down the walls and barriers that sometimes prevent students from learning at the highest potential. Just go by her room anytime during the day, at lunch, or after school. There's always students buzzing around her room, attending tutorials, taking reassessments, talking to her about life, and being part of the Creekview family. So whether it's through AVID, our leadership team, biology, or Young Life, Ms. Gutierrez is making a difference in the lives of our children by giving back to her community as we prepare students to be good people, good workers, and good citizens. We're grateful for Madi, and we're grateful that she's part of our team, and honored to be able to recognize her as Creekview's Teacher of the Second 9 Weeks.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman and members of the board. My name is Sherry Scrutch, and I have the privilege of serving as the principal at Ranch View High School. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Justin Helpenstill, our teacher of the second 9 weeks. This is Justin's 4th year at Ranch View, where he teaches English 1 and IB Diploma English 4. But this is his 21st year in education altogether. He's married to his wife, Narissa, and they have 2 beautiful children, Stella and Brahm. Justin's story as an amazing teacher began as a paraprofessional teacher's aide in a special education classroom. He has worked with every level of student since and is now actively working on recruiting future teachers as well. Justin's colleagues shared, Mr. Helpenstill has a wealth of content knowledge, leadership experience, instructional methodology, and practical classroom management tips. He cares for his students, and he's always looking for new ways to improve and innovate his classroom. And he's really fun to just chat with, too. Because he exemplifies professionalism, integrity, strong work ethic, and a love for his job, I am thrilled to recognize Mr. Justin Helpenstill as the Wolfpack's Teacher of the second 9 weeks.
Good evening, Superintendent Chapman, Board of Trustees, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Timothy Isley, and I serve as principal at Early College High School. And I want to welcome you, or please join me, in recognizing with our faculty our second-term Teacher of the Year, Miss Jamie Wegscheider. Wegs has taught high school English at Early College High School since 2012. Prior to that, she spent 10 years teaching in Provence, France, south of Paris. Along with her husband, David, they are parents of 3 children, Zachary, Victoria, and Francois, who are here tonight. And briefly, she does and she leads. She's always got above-the-line behavior. Sponsor Girls Who Code, I will. Collaborate on instructional rounds, I will. Korean BTS club, I do. Host potlucks and tea service with students, I do that. Need help? Ask me. Collaborate with the Dallas County Promise Challenge competition, you betcha. Mentor leaders through the Big Bear, Little Bear program, yes. You are a great teacher. Kids love you, and I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Chapman, members of the board, guests. My name is Michael Arriola, and it is my honor to serve as the principal at Newman Smith High School. It is my honor today to introduce Miss Lori Maynard as our teacher of the second 9 weeks. Miss Maynard has served the students of Carrollton-Farmers branch for over 20 years and is serving in her second year at Newman Smith High School. She teaches our Fundamentals English 1 course, and she works with some of our most needy students. Miss Maynard is here because she truly loves her students. When Dr. Chapman challenged us to be the exception, Miss Maynard has taken on that challenge, and she is truly the exception for her students. Her students love her, and she loves them. We look at Miss Maynard as a role model teacher at Newman Smith High School and in our district. Knowing her for nearly 14 years, my ex-wife taught her son. I've known that she's an exceptional human being and loves serving students. Miss Maynard, thank you for working at Newman Smith High School, and congratulations for being our teacher the second 9 weeks.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Chapman, Mrs. Klein, and members of the board. My name is Brooke Hall, and it is my privilege to serve as the principal of R.L. Turner High School. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Tess Muggenberg, Turner's teacher of the 9 weeks. Albert Einstein said, "Only a life lived in the service to others is worth living." In her 12 years as a Turner Lion, Tess has embodied this idea of service. Tess has taught pre-AP English 1 and 2, AP English Literature, World Experience, and Creative Writing. She has served as our campus liaison with the Advanced Academic Services Department for 11 years. She was a National Honor Society sponsor for 8 years and has served on the Campus Improvement Committee. And this year, she began working as one of our campus instructional facilitators. Tess is also a founder and sponsor of our Louder Than a Bomb slam poetry team. Last year, the team took second place in the Dallas area competition, and she was named the Young DFW Writers Teacher of the Year. One of Tess's colleagues says, "She is a supportive colleague and shares her gifts and knowledge freely with others. She cares passionately about challenging students to achieve at the highest levels possible." Tess, the Turner family appreciates you and your heart for service, and we congratulate you on this well-deserved award.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Wesley, the principal of Alternative Education. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce to you Mr. Ricky Vargas, the teacher of the second 9 weeks for the Mary Grimes Education Center. Ricky has been at Grimes a mere year and a half, and even though he's been there but a short time, his impact has been enormous. He is currently working on his master's degree in counseling, and this shows through in his caring and empathy for our students, even the tough ones. He finds out why the students are struggling, and it's not always an academic issue. Many times they have things going on in their personal life, and he's great at talking them through their issues so they can move on in their schoolwork. He will tell you, "I love working with our students and helping them to get the support that they need so they can be successful." He's compassionate, and it's an unusual day if you don't see him smiling. You can sometimes find him playing basketball with the diploma students as they take a well-earned brain break in the gym. Ricky, who is married with 3 children, is a California native with a laid-back California vibe that serves him well at Grimes. He and his family love being outdoors and spending time as a family. Please join me in recognizing Ricky Vargas as the teacher of the second 9 weeks. And now for the other half of alternative education. It is my pleasure to introduce to you tonight Mr. Alvertus Williams, the teacher of the second 9 weeks for the Salazar Learning Center. Mr. Williams has been at Salazar for 19 years, starting his career as an instructional aide, then working his way towards his teacher certification in secondary art. Mr. Williams currently teaches all levels of secondary art at DAP. Mr. Williams basically grew up at DAP, starting as a young single man, and there's stories told of staff members at Salazar having to buy him an alarm clock so he could get to work on time. This young man is now married to his lovely wife, Tennille, has 2 children, Jaden and Alex, who attend CFB schools, and has a little bit of gray in his beard. When asked why he worked at DAP for so many years, he replied, "I feel very protective of our students and enjoy the challenge of working to make a difference in their lives." Mr. Williams is particularly effective with our 6th grade students. Those are his advisory students, and he mentors them through the transition from elementary to middle school. He comes from a long line of teachers and proudly carries on this tradition. It is for these reasons that Mr. Williams is the teacher of the second 9 weeks for Salazar.
I wasn't going to read yours. Good evening, Dr. Chapman, board members, and everyone in attendance. My name is Victor Melton, Maintenance Supervisor for the CFBISD, and tonight I have the honor of introducing you to Joe Lascano, the maintenance employee for the last 9 weeks. Joe has worked in the grounds department for 7 years, where he is responsible for mowing and trimming all of R.L. Turner and Central by himself. Yeah. This includes 1 soccer field, 1 football field, 1 baseball field, approximately 15 acres of grass, 1.5 miles of fence line. Don't forget, you got to go one way and then back again. That's 3 miles of fence and almost a mile of sidewalk. Joe does all this in the North Texas weather. And we all know what that's like when we came in here tonight, right? Also, he's extremely dedicated to his work. Joe was actually, I talked to Nick Beavers, the baseball coach. He said this quote, "Joe is doing a fantastic job on our fields, and he's always willing to help everyone that comes and asks." Joe has 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and I am very proud that we have the opportunity to honor one of our grounds crew members. Joe, thank you very much for all you do.
Dr. Chapman, members of the board, and guests. I'm Rochelle Sharon, Director of Student Nutrition, and tonight I have the distinct privilege to recognize Student Nutrition's Employee of the 9 Weeks, Irene Dorvasak. Irene, who originally was a Jersey girl, moved to Texas in 1986 with her husband Les of 35 years. She has 2 wonderful children, a daughter Kristen and a son Joe, both who attended CFB schools from kindergarten through graduation. Kristen is a nurse at Parkland Hospital, and Joe served 4 years in the Army and will graduate this spring from Arizona State University with a degree in urban development. Irene joined our student nutrition family in 1989 as her children went into the 1st grade, and for the past 21 years has been serving the students at Blaylock Middle School. The staff at Blaylock is in agreement that Irene is exceptional. Some of their comments were, "It's her caring and helpful attitude that makes everyone around her want to do the best they can to serve the students and staff. Her heart is always in the right place all of the time." It is that humble servant's heart that makes Irene an excellent team player. She is one of those employees who quietly does her job without fail, requires little or no supervision, and always exhibits a helpful, positive attitude when she's at work. And she is always at work. Irene has only missed 3.5 days in the past 3 years. Blaylock Middle School and the Student Nutrition Department are excited to have her as part of their exceptional teams. Irene is a great asset to this district. Join me in honoring Irene Dorvasak.
Thank you to our principals and our schools for nominating the teachers of the 9 weeks that you presented to us tonight. Thank you for the stories you shared and what you talked about. It's exciting. We also really appreciate our support staff that helps the teachers do their jobs and helps keep our campuses looking good and our children fed. And it's very impressive and moving. I really appreciate everything y'all do, and I think that Dr. Chapman, with the Teacher of the 9 Weeks program, it gives us an opportunity to hear from even more people each year. So I look forward to the end of the year celebrations that we're going to have about more of this, and look forward to seeing all the accomplishments of our students that are taught by y'all and served by y'all. So thank y'all very much for what you do for CFB. So at this point, we are ready for district announcements.
Good evening, everyone. I have just a few announcements. February 15th is a student holiday and a staff development day for teachers across the district. February the 18th is a bad weather day, and we haven't had to use it yet. I know, we'll see. And so if we don't use it, it will be a district holiday. All of our campuses and district offices will be closed. CFBISD will hold an Avid Family Night on February the 27th at 6:30 p.m. at Perry Middle School. CFBISD Avid students and their families are invited to attend the CFBISD Avid Family Night. The event will feature workshops for parents facilitated in English and in Spanish, as well as games and other activities for students. Food and childcare will be provided. There is a special guest speaker, former Dallas Cowboy Kenyon Coleman, will be speaking to students on an encouraging session on finding their purpose in life. Our countdown to pre-K, which is our welcome night for pre-K students, will be held on April the 1st at 6:30 p.m. at all of our pre-K campuses. Our welcome to kindergarten, our countdown to kindergarten welcome night is April the 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at all of our elementary campuses. Check our website for more details if you have an upcoming pre-K student or upcoming kindergarten student. Have you heard that we are launching a new Command Coding Academy at Davis and La Valita Elementary Schools? The application for all of our Stellar Signature programs is now open. We've had lots of people filling it out, so if you want to apply to one of our Stellar Signature programs, you can find that application at cfbisd.edu. I would like to invite Council PTA Representative Cindy Castillo to come and give an update on the PTA.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Chapman, members of the board, and guests. My name is Cindy Castillo, and I serve as the hospitality chair for the CFB Council PTA. I'd like to update you as to the efforts of Council PTA over the past few months. Last month, we had the opportunity to recognize our Reflections winning entries at a ceremony in January. And while I can't give you the statistics on how many students were given awards, I can tell you that over 250 cookies were enjoyed by all. That's just an aside. In addition to this artwork up here, we hope you will take the opportunity to view the Reflection winning entries at the Josie Ranch Library during spring break. Together with the District, Council PTA is hosting our next and last parent education presentation for this school year on March 27th, entitled Today's Drug Trends. There will be free childcare for children 3 years and up, and it will be presented in both English and Spanish. Be on the lookout for more information to come on both the cfbpta.org and district site, along with social media. In advance of the local elections in May, Council PTA and the AAUW will host a CFB School Board Candidate Forum on April 8th at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom. This is open to everyone, and we hope the community will attend to hear from all the school board candidates. Look for more detailed info to come as we get closer to elections. We invite you all to join us for our upcoming Texas PTA Life Member Award Ceremony and Council PTA meeting on April 25th at 6:30 p.m. at Perry Middle School. We will honor all those receiving a Texas PTA Life Member Award, as well as hold our Council PTA elections. Everyone is invited, and we hope to see you there. We hope you'll remember to engage with our local PTAs on Facebook or other social media platforms to see about the events and activities at all of our campuses to help meet our mutual goal of high achievement for each student. Thank you again for your continued support of PTA.
That completes our announcements.
Thank you. I also want to thank the family members and team members of our honorees that are here today. We appreciate your attendance and your celebration with them, especially those of y'all that bring your kids. It's always fun to watch their excitement too. So thank y'all so much. At this time, we're going to take a brief recess. It appears to be 7:41, and we'll come back at 7:51. Thank you very much. This meeting of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees is called back to order. The next item on the agenda is audience for guests. We have two audience for guests. Ms. Castellano, are there any others? Okay. I want to remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling audience for guests. Anyone interested to speak during audience for guests must sign in and list the topic they want to discuss. Each speaker will be allowed to speak once during the audience for guests. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. And audience for guest portion of the meeting will be no more than 30 minutes total, as dictated by board policy BED local. If during that time the board is not able to hear from everyone, which we only have to, those that did not have an opportunity to speak will be invited to sign up to speak during audience for guests at the board's next regularly scheduled meeting. If you speak during audience for guests either individually or on behalf of a group, please remember the board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda Last, we ask that you not discuss students who are not your own. Timekeeper, Mr. Ramos, please start the 30 minutes now, and then for each speaker, 3 minutes once they start speaking. The timekeeper will let you know when you have 1 minute left, and we have one from Mr. Greg Alford, and you are invited up here.
Thank you. My name is Greg Alvord, and I'm running for Texas State Board of Education District 14. I understand that Carrollton-Farmers Branch is not technically in District 14, but a lot of your parents live in Denton County, and District 14 includes whole counties, 21 of them, one of which is Denton County. I'm passionate about three things: my grandchildren, public education, and the impact of science and math education on our society. I did my entire elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and postgraduate work in public institutions. I've taught high school. I have been on a school board for 12 years. I have been a computer scientist at New York State Department of Health and at NASA. I work for a software company now. And every place I've been, I've had driver's licenses in 7 states. Every place I've been, I've done a little bit of adjunct teaching at the community colleges nearby. Back in 1957, the last time the Russians attacked us technologically with Sputnik, the response of the country was for the Defense Department to invest in math and science education and the training of science and math teachers. I was a student who benefited from that experimentation on how to teach science and math. And it's been with me my entire career. And I believe firmly that we need to do a better job, although I can't fault anything I've seen tonight in the way that you folks are dealing with science and math. But we need as a society to do a better job of communicating science and math. And I'll throw out one challenge to you. When I graduated from high school, I knew how to program in Fortran. It was a rare talent. I was lucky that I was able to do it, and it's led me through my entire career. Now, knowledge of computers is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's a requirement for almost any job you can think of. There is a skill, a rare skill out there right now that's going to become the ubiquitous skill 30 years from now. We don't know what it is. As our future unfolds before us, we don't know what it is. So the things that we need to do for students, beyond just knowledge, but the skill to resolve, the skills to be able to deal with that future as it unfolds in front of you. And I hope to be able to help the students of Texas, the students of Carrollton-Farmers Branch, and my grandkids have a better science and math education in Texas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. Our next audience for guests is Ms. Shirley Tarpley.
I told them at City Council the other night, the older I get, the longer it takes me to get up here. My name is Shirley Tarpley, and I stand up here tonight to call your attention to Black History Month. There are so many things that were invented by Black Americans that we need to do, take notice of. Because not one person came up here to the school board meeting without that battery. I always like to joke and tell because I don't know, but I said that black man got tired of getting out there in the rain, the sleet, and the snow, and cranking up that Model T Ford for people to ride in. So he said, I can do better than this. So he came up with that battery. And not much has changed from that battery since he made it. You know, they've updated, made it longer and all of that, but not much has been done since then. And this one I love to tell about. This black man was trying to get in touch with his wife one day, had something important to tell her, but he couldn't find her. So he had to wait until he got home. And he said, I can do better than that. So he came up with the gamma ray for these cell phones. And I tell you, I'm so sick of seeing people with the cell phones in their hand and don't know where they're walking, don't know where they're going. It's just everywhere. That might not have been a good thing to do. And he was at Motorola, the one here, you know, in Farmers Branch. You know where that Motorola is? And that's where he did it. It is said that black history is a continuing strength in our society. I agree. It makes society aware of the great contributions made by black Americans and encourages young black children to use math and science. The true meaning of Black History Month is to honor and respect others for his or her contribution to society. A few of the Black History men. I do women history in March since it's Women History Month. So everything in this month I write in my calendar is all about black men. James Armistead Lafayette was the first black double agent. And he became a valuable intelligence agent during the Revolutionary War by gathering information concerning the
Ms. Tarpley, are you about?
Huh?
Are you about done?
Yeah, is it? Yeah. Okay.
You can have like 15 more seconds if you want to finish
because
up.
that'll encourage y'all to read about it.
We're on a cliff. That was effective. Well, thank you. We will proceed to our next agenda item, number 4, consent agenda. The consent agenda is a mechanism that the board uses to approve a number of routine items together with a single vote. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the public notice for this meeting includes the list of all consent agenda items, and the board has been provided ample information about these items in advance. Prior to any action taken on the consent agenda, board members may request withdrawal of individual items for clarification or discussion. Board members, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda at this time? Mr. Shackman.
I'd like to remove item 4F.
Okay. And then,
And I'll make a motion in a moment, but I think there's,
yes, Mr. Ramos?
I'd like to remove item 4C, please.
Okay. Board members, anybody else?
and Mrs. Klein, it is appropriate that item 4E be in our consent agenda. But I would like to put on the record that that item is talking about a savings that has happened within the district of nearly $3 million. And it is the result of our finance department working with consultants and providing great resource to the board. And it is a way that we have been able to recapture some tax that was assessed that did not happen. And the bottom line is it puts money back in our coffers. We often talk about that we are working hard to be fiscally responsible. It's a great example of us doing that. Thank you to Ms. Tillman, to Mr. Roderick, to all of the folks that work in our finance group. And I just want those in the community who are watching this and those who are in the audience to know this board really does care about the finances and the fiscal responsibility of this district, and this is a great way to highlight that. And with that being said, then I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented with item 4F removed.
Thank you, Mr. Shackman.
4C.
Well, we're not removing it, he's recusing himself.
But we'll still vote We'll vote twice
Okay,
now.
all
Does
right,
that make sense,
then
Dr.
I will
Chapman?
amend my
Okay.
motion to remove 4C and 4F.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Shackman. Ms. Herbacek made a second. All those in favor of the consent agenda as amended by removing 4F and 4C? That is unanimous. So we will now vote on the, okay, so I would like to vote without Mr. Ramos, or should I do that later? What do you think?
You can do it at 6A.
Okay, we'll do it at 6A. Okay, so the non-action items for discussion are under number 5. Dr. Chapman?
Yes, ma'am. At this time, Ms. Tillman will talk to you about the bond issuance.
Okay.
Thank you. As we begin to move forward with taking our next steps with our $350 million voter authorized bond issue, this evening I've asked Laura Alexander with Hilltop Securities to come present just an overview of all things bonds. And she is definitely an expert on this topic and is available to answer any questions you have. Laura has been working on CFB issues and with our district since 2005, so she has a long history with the district, and I'm going to turn it over to her right now for her presentation.
Great, thank you. Good evening. The district hasn't sold any bonds for new projects since 2013. We've done some refinancings for savings over the last several years, and some of you probably remember those. But so I think Tanya and I thought this might be a good time to sort of step back and say, what are we talking about here when we say we're going to issue bonds? So feel free to ask questions along the way. So this may benefit some of you as well. The whole idea behind a bond and when the district sells a bond is that it's a contract with the investors. It's a way to raise money, and it's similar to your home mortgage in that it's, can be done over different periods of time. The interest rate can be fixed. It can be variable. Instead of having monthly payments, bonds tend to pay twice a year. But essentially, thinking about it like your mortgage is probably a good way to think about the districts when they owe payments on their bond issues. As you guys know, the district bond authorization was just recently approved, and that's the way that districts have to get the authority to sell bonds is through voter authorization, so it goes out to everybody in the district for a general vote. The bonds can be sold what we call in one issuance, like all at once. The whole amount you voted, you could sell it all at one time, or you can break it into pieces. And we're selling the new authorization over several different issuances, and we'll talk about the 2019 bonds here in just a minute. So the district repays bonds using property taxes. The property tax rate split into two pieces. There's the maintenance and operation piece, and then the interest and sinking fund component of the tax rate. To folks who pay their taxes, you think of it as just being one total tax rate, but there's actually two components. The part that's the interest and sinking fund is dedicated to debt service. It can't be used for anything else. It's also not subject to rollback and kind of has some other properties to it, but it's looked at as a discrete, separate revenue source, and those funds go directly into the property tax revenues that are generated by that go directly into the interest and sinking fund for the benefit of the bondholders. The Attorney General actually has a 50-cent test debt limitation. As far as I can remember, the district hasn't had a debt tax rate over maybe 32 cents, 33 cents. So it's never really come into play, but that for some fast-growing districts in certain periods of time, that's been a cap sort of on what they can afford to issue is because of that 50-cent test that the Attorney General oversees. So bonds can be repaid over a long period of time. State law allows up to 40 years. The district has historically used 20 years as a repayment term for the debt. Probably the most important thing is that you don't finance something over a longer period of time than the actual useful life. So, for example, if you were going to, finance buses, you probably wouldn't want to finance them over 20 or 25 years. Your buses, and you probably have some buses that last that long, but you wouldn't want to go into it thinking you were going to finance them over that long period of time. But obviously, a new school building, you'd have no trouble financing it over 20 or 30 years. Your buildings really could probably go 40. And that's just sort of a general rule of thumb. But again, the district does tend to use 20 years as a repayment term. Interest rates on the district's bonds are tax exempt, so they're not subject to federal income tax for the investors. And so that allows the interest rates to be a little lower than a typical taxable bond, like in the corporate world. So the district benefits by a lower interest rate, therefore reduces their payments. Interest rates are set when the bonds are actually priced, or sold, is another word we use. And then we usually have a delay before the bonds are actually closed, in which case they're actually funded. But the interest rates are set when they're actually priced out in the public market. You have an underwriter that actually finds the buyer, so there's kind of a middleman. It's called a bond underwriter. They're like a brokerage firm oftentimes, so the Morgan Stanleys of the world, or JP Morgans or Citibanks. Those kind of firms end up being the ones that actually buy the district's bonds initially, and then they'll go out and sell it into the market. The district's bonds trade with a AAA rating, which is the highest rating available in the market. So the higher the credit rating, the lower the interest rate. So people think, oh, that's less risky. I'm willing to take less of a return on my investment. So the PSF allows you, the Permanent School Fund Guarantee allows you to have the AAA rating. The district's underlying ratings on its own, absent the PSF guarantee, are AA+, AA1, which are just one notch below the PSF. So the district's bonds trade extremely well in the market and will be priced at basically the lowest rates available on the day that we take, that we sell the bonds. Talked a little bit about the term. The longer the bond, the final term, so that like the 20 years we were talking about a minute ago, the longer that you go out, the higher the interest rate. So investors want to be compensated for holding bonds over a longer period of time. If I was just going to hold a bond for a year or two, I would be happier with a shorter interest rate, but because I'm locking it up for a longer period of time, the longer you go out, the higher the interest rate. And so we see this kind of general scale of interest rates assigned to each maturity of the bond. So the bonds are maybe have a 20-year final term, but there'll be a little piece that comes due in 1 year and a little piece that comes due in the second year and in the third year, and each of those will have a different interest rate assigned to them. We tend to refer to the aggregate rate, kind of a blended all-in borrowing cost of the district whenever we're quoting rates. We don't really break it down into all the 20 different interest rates that make up the bond issue. And you'll see that here in just a minute. We'll talk about what we're looking towards for this coming bond issue. Let's see, I think we hit that one. So the property tax base. When we're looking at our modeling, so we look at a multi-year kind of financial forecast with Tanya and Scott's help. We take into account the district's property tax current property tax base, so the property values in all of the district and what you levy a tax against. We look at interest rates, we look at the term of the debt, we look at a multi-year model. So we're looking at how does, when are we going to layer in the debt, and obviously what your needs are, right? So when you actually expect that you need to spend the money, so that we factor all that in and are looking out over multi-years. So the property tax base is important, not just for where you are today, but the growth assumptions that we're using, because we're looking out over a multi-year forecast. We want to make sure, just like on the budget or something like that, when you're looking at many years, that we're using numbers that we feel like are reasonable but somewhat conservative. Again, you don't really want to be in a position where you've been too aggressive with your assumptions and then you have debt payments that you can't afford within the limitations that you had intended. Just a quick recap. Here's the past years of the so again, this is the total property tax base within the district. Obviously, the more recently, you've been growing, 6, 7, 9% last year. For our model, looking forward, we're using 4.5%. Again, this is with Tanya and Scott's input. 4.5% for 2020, 2% for 2021, and 1% for 2022, and then 0% thereafter. We're obviously not forecasting a lot of bonds being sold after that. We're just trying to get through this initial authorization, but we still run out for what that looks like over a longer period of time. So if the district's tax base grows less than these projections, you can actually, we have sort of some tools in the toolbox for held in reserve and sort of how we would manage that. You can use surplus funds that you have on hand already. You have a debt service fund balance that is used as a buffer to manage the tax rate. You could use an alternative principal repayment structure, so we could customize how the principal gets repaid each of those 20 years and tweak it a little bit. We could also look at refinancing or restructuring alternatives within some of your other debt that's already outstanding. And we can also look at delaying future bond issues if things don't go according to plan. Just sort of like that's how things that we're always looking at and saying, does this still work? So of the $350.9 million that was recently authorized, we're looking at selling it over 3 installments, which is consistent, I think, with the original plan that you guys saw when you approved to take that out to the voters. We're going to sell approximately $117 million this year, and then every other year, so then the remaining split in 2021 and 2023. The interest rate we're forecasting right now, we have in our model 3.29, but that's a little bit over the current market. You can see, so really I think current market's closer to 3%. So rates, long-term rates are still really low. Obviously, short-term rates have been coming up. You hear about the Fed, increasing short-term rates, but the municipal market on the long end is still very attractive. And then in our model, again, we try to be conservative. We're using 5% for future years. We also break into the total bond authorization into the technology piece and then the facility piece. So we amortize some of the debt shorter over 7 years to match up again with the useful life, and then the rest is over 20 years. And we're targeting the 20-cent tax rate that the district currently has. So we're trying to maintain that throughout the implementation of all three of these bond issues. So specific to the 2019 bonds, and this ties into the bond order that you'll be considering tonight. So these specific terms, so we're looking at issuing, again, $116.67 million. The structure is 20 years. I said level debt, it's mostly like equal, like a mortgage style amortization, so level payments. And then the interest rate we've already covered. We are anticipating taking bids on March 5th. We're actually waiting on the PSF guarantee, so that runs through a process once a month. The state, gathers them all, the applications, and runs through. It's a little bit of a, it's not controversial at all. It's just they take their time and we're sort of at their schedule. And so if we can get the PSF guarantee out of them a little sooner, we'll probably try to get into the market a little sooner because rates are still really attractive right now. And I'm not too worried about interest rate risk between now and March 5th, but it's one of those bird in hand things. I think if we could get in the market sooner, that would be good. So the parameter bond order, so this is consistent with how you've authorized your bonds the last several times. It is basically a delegation of the final term. So we set parameters, and as long as the pricing that we come back with, in this case on March 5th, fits within the parameters, and parameters would be like a total maximum principal amount, you see the maximum interest rate, the final maturity date, then the designated officer, so the superintendent or associate superintendent, would have the ability to sign all the paperwork essentially because it fits within the board delegated parameters. For refundings, we usually have a savings threshold, if that sounds familiar, like you have to achieve so many dollars of savings in the past. For this, there's no refunding component to it, no refinancing piece to it, it's all just new debt. So it's just an interest rate, a maximum interest rate, and then a maximum par amount and the maximum term that dictate this. The benefit of the parameter bond order is that it allows us the flexibility to get into the market on a given day. So we'll have the ability to move around, like I said, from that March 5th date. You guys only meet once a month. I say only, I'm sure it feels often to you, but that means we would have to be targeting one of your board meeting dates if we didn't have this delegated authority. So that's really the benefit, is it gives us some market timing flexibility. Here are the proposed parameters. So maximum interest rate of 4%. There's obviously a pretty good cushion over the current market of about 3%. The maximum principal amount of $116.67 million. And the final maturity date of February 15th, 2039, so that's the 20-year term. And then we tend to do 180-day authorizations. That's the most allowed under state law. We certainly expecting to move quickly and don't expect it to run that long, but just, again, for flexibility's sake, that tends to be how we've done it. And this is just our schedule. It's a little small, hard to read, but basically we had rating calls today with the rating agencies, and those went very well. We're, like I said, looking to take bids on March 5th and then close in early April. And that's when the district will actually have the funds on hand. The district so we're, like I said, I think we're on schedule and good with where everything is. And hopefully I've kind of explained the parameter order. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board members, are there any questions? I actually had a few, but as you went through the presentation, you answered them.
Oh, good.
So I am out of questions. Mr. Shackman?
Targeting a approximately $117 million sale in 2019. You mentioned the $63 million that's targeted technology and is going to be 7-year increments versus the 20-year. Is that going to be broken into thirds over
Yes,
the
it's
19, 21, 23 as well?
It's been split
Okay.
among the different the series, yes. Yeah. Question.
What do we think the interest will be? Because we're talking between 3 and 3 1/4 approximately on the 20 years. What does that do to the interest when we go to the 7-year?
So I think the 7 years probably in the 2-ish% range. And obviously that gets blended in on the cost, but I mean, just order of magnitude, it's obviously much lower, but,
Good, thanks.
Any others? Ms. Derrick?
So with the sale on March 5th and then the closing of funds by April 2nd, does that keep us on target for the projected building plans that we were presented earlier?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on target for
Yes.
everything. Okay.
Ms. Roderick?
But we haven't approved any projects.
No, ma'am.
But for this to be funded through the bond yet, so I just want to clarify, we haven't done that yet.
So it looks like
You'll
we've
be-
exhausted our questions, but
Yep.
Dr. Chapman?
No, and this is just step one to give us the funds that are readily available, and Ms. Tillman and staff are going through. You want to walk through just real quick, just the architect piece, the RFQs with the 18 that submitted.
Yes, we need to get the funds in place so that we can actually hire architects and they begin the design process on the jobs. We have received 18 responses back for architectural services. We'll be selecting a pool of architects that we will then assign to the specific jobs based upon their experience and expertise that aligns with the jobs that we have upcoming. So that's the first step that we'll be taking after we get the funds in place.
Then we'll be bringing designs, et cetera, and so forth to the board at that point. This is just phase one, getting the funds readily available so we can start that process of design.
Appears we've reached the end of that item, and Ms. Tillman and Ms. Alexander, thank you very much for your very complete presentation. So now we are on item number 6, items for discussion and/or action. 6A is items removed from consent. We have 4F and 4C. Would you like?
Separately.
Yeah, so we'll do 4C first. Is there any discussion on item 4C? So all those in favor of 4C? Oh, we need a motion, sorry. I'm just ready to move on. Do we have a motion for 4C?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda item 4C.
And Mr. Ramos pulled it because he doesn't want to vote on it, so that's why someone else has to make the motion.
Right.
And so we have a motion by Mr. Shackman. Mr. Matthews is the second. All those in favor? And so that is unanimous with Mr. Ramos recusing himself. So item 4F, Mr. Shackman?
Ms. Klein, I just wanted to bring this to our attention and discussion and potentially consider it as a future agenda item. I know when I served on the audit committee almost 6 years ago, it was a discussion at that time that we had continued to use the audit firm that we have used every year since, and there was some potential discussion about when would we find ourselves in a position it would be beneficial to the district to potentially look at another firm. I don't know if there are any GASB requirements. I know there are a couple of the professional accounting corporations that oversee the various processes that recommend that you don't go longer than 5 years. There are a couple that in some corporate structures that you cannot use an audit firm for over 5 years. I think Hankins, Eastup, Deaton, Tonsey, the folks that we have been using have done good work for us. There is just some potential thought that says, at what point in time does it make sense to have another pair of eyes look at the district books? And if we as a board are fully comfortable with continuing, I can be comfortable with that, but I did want us to talk about it because it's actually come up 2 or 3 times over the last several years, and just to kind of say, is there any thought processes, and do we want to ask staff to bring us any information about what would be involved if we got someone else to at least give us bids, or are there any regulations through GASB or the other accounting processes that we are required to participate with that would give us advice? So that was my thought for discussion.
I know I was in the meeting a year ago when it was discussed, and there was new staff on board, and there was a wish to not cause a lot of havoc because of all the transition that was occurring. Did the audit committee have any communications this year about that subject of the audit firm selection?
I don't think we discussed that to my recollection specifically, but I know that in the past in these meetings, we've heard information about the benefit of some consistency, so a regulation or any kind of thing that wasn't mentioned. One thing that was discussed in the committee is that we do get a benefit that the partners from this firm do come in and spend time with our management team and our finance team. And so while I'm sure junior accountants do a fabulous job at what they do, we're getting a benefit for our dollars of partners in that firm coming and reviewing our. So I do think that's a benefit, but there was no discussion as far as regulation or length of service or anything like that.
And I would offer, Mr. Scheckman, that it would probably be appropriate that next year you could volunteer to be on the audit committee. And you could visit this issue.
I redraw, no.
And they start meeting in November. And it would, it would be fruitful, I think, to discuss it then, when the period exists for the timeliness to do that. And the discussion and the understanding, I remember the point being made that some firms will come in and artificially give you a price, and then they have a lot of things they do to elevate the price. And so there's pros and cons to both options. And I would ask to have you lend your opinion next year with whatever person is appointing these positions.
And I thought it would be worth adding that our price is pretty low for the audit firm, and it actually just went down by $1,000 or $2,000 this year. So that's one other benefit that we lock in by continuing with them.
And we're not paying little and getting little. We feel like we're paying and getting the cream of the crop from what they offer. So, but I do understand. I remember the conversation you're remembering from 6 years ago, and I remember that, and I brought that up a year ago when I was in the meeting.
Well, I'm comfortable with the firm, and I just wanted us as a board to discuss it and make sure that we're comfortable with it. And
I think it's a healthy discussion.
And I might even volunteer for the committee. Unless somebody else has something else to add, then I would make a motion that we approve 4F as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Scheckman. We have a motion by Mr. Scheckman. We have a second by Ms. Hrbacek. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So now we've covered all the items removed from the consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
And we will now proceed to there's no more under 6.
Yes, 6-1, please.
6.1, consider possible action regarding all matters related to May 4th, 2019 general election, including adoption of an election order. Ms. Tillman.
Yes. Texas election law states that it is necessary for the Board of Trustees to pass an order establishing the procedures for filing and conducting a trustee election. On May 4th, the district will be conducting an election for 3 at-large member Board of Trustee positions. You all received the order in advance, and wanted just to point out that this order also authorizes both the superintendent and myself to execute a joint election contract with Dallas County. We have met with Dallas County and the other entities that are participating in the joint election and reviewed that contract. It is not quite yet complete. Our attorneys are reviewing that. It is standard to prior years. So as we work through that, passing this order does give us the authorization to execute that, so I wanted to point that out. In addition, I wanted to let you know that we are working with Denton County because when we do a joint election with Dallas, we have had some confusion in the past. And so we're working with Denton and Dallas to see what we can do to improve the communication to those voters. So we have reached out to both groups to make those adjustments as well. So we would like to ask the board to adopt the general election order as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. And this year is interesting because Carrollton, the city, doesn't have an election this year. So we usually split costs with the other overlapping people. So, board members, under 6A1, is there any discussion? Oh, Mr. Matthews?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the general election order as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews. We have a second by Mr. Ramos. Is there any more conversation or discussion about this item, Ms. Valenzuela?
I just want to thank you so much for discussing some of the issues that we've had in the past. As a resident of Denton County, it's been difficult for voters to get information about when the election is or where it is through normal electronic means because it's administered by Dallas County. If you live in the city of Dallas or if you live in North Carrollton, you go to the Dallas website. It says that you live in Denton County. You need to go to the Denton website. You go to the Denton website. It says there's no election. And this has been a problem for a couple of years now. And I am so thrilled that we're really making some motions to get this figured out so that we don't have any unintentional voter disenfranchisement. So thank you so much.
And I am still concerned that it may not be simple and it may require the legislature and their leadership to find solutions because it is rampant throughout all the Dallas County overlaps with other entities. And I think it is hard to make it clear for people.
Can I add one thing too that was brought up in the meeting? Dallas is also investigating going to countywide polling locations. So they've put a committee together and they'll be moving forward. We'll be getting more information on that as well. That would open up the locations and we would be not having the issues we've had where in May you're voting at one polling place, in November it changes. It would standardize all of that. So we'll be bringing you more information on that as that rolls forward. They've targeted November to try to have that in place. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? So all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank y'all. 6A2, consider all matters incident related to the issuance and sale of, this sounds like deja vu, Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Building Bonds Series 2019, including the adoption of an order authorizing the issuance of such bonds, establishing parameters for the sale and issuance of such bonds, and delegating certain matters to authorized officials of the district. Ms. Tillman?
Yes, thank you. We have another expert here with us this evening. Kristen Savant is with our bond counsel, Norton Rose Fulbright. She's standing up right now. She can answer any of your questions about the bond order that you all received. There's a copy at your desk, and I believe you received that in advance as well. Kristen has actually been doing work with the district since 1999, so she also has a long history with the district and is very familiar with what bond activity we've had. This evening, we're recommending the authorization of the bond order you've received. The bond order authorizes the superintendent of schools, the associate superintendent for business services, or the chief financial officer to act on behalf of the district in selling and delivering the bonds and carrying out other procedures specified in the order. The specific parameters are on page 2, section 3A. That outlines all of the items that you're actually delegating and also provides the parameters that we're restricted to meet in order to complete the sale. So we are asking and recommending that you authorize the parameter bond order for the sale of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Building Bonds Series 2019 as presented.
Board members, we have an item. Do we have a motion? Mr. Ramos.
Make a motion that the school board authorizes the parameter bond order for the sale of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Building Bonds, Series 2019.
We have a motion by Mr. Ramos. We have a second by Ms. Valenzuela. Is there any discussion? Mr. Shackman?
Remind everyone in the community that they can keep track of the bond building information and what we're doing with all of this. There's a bunch of verbiage in this order that actually defines what is being done, schools and projects and all of that. And that website, when you go onto the CFBISD website, right up very early, there's a tab that you can click on bond information, and as we work forward, all of that will be there, so you, when you're in the community, can keep track of all of this that we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Shackman. That is helpful. With no more discussion items or questions, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So that brings us, and thank you, Ms. Tillman, and our attorney in the back for your, how many years of service, both of y'all? You're not an attorney, no? Yeah. Yeah, okay. But, and thank you, Ms. Tillman and Mr. Roderick. So that brings us to item number 7, closed meeting is authorized under Texas Government Code, including but not limited to Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, real property, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, security devices, 551.082, school children, district employees, disciplinary matter or complaint, 551.0821, personally and identifiable student information, 551.084, investigation pursuant to Section 554.074, Texas Government Code, deliberations regarding the employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including investigation of a complaint concerning a public official pursuant to Section 551 Texas Government Code. Consultation with district's legal counsel regarding legal and procedural issues relating to personnel matters, including investigation of a complaint concerning a public official. So, audience members, you're welcome to remain in the boardroom as board members recess and move into room 150, the executive conference room for deliberations. The time is now 8:35. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, 8:35 p.m. This meeting is recessed. Back on the record in open session, having returned from closed session, the time is now 11:10 p.m. The board will move on to the next agenda item, number 8, comments from board members regarding posted agenda items. Board members, do you have any comments to make on posted agenda items at this time? Ladies and gentlemen, hearing none, seeing none, we have reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 11 p.m.